Hey folks, Joe Falong here. It's been about 2 months since my original Tediore Primo Rafa video. Thank you guys for the support, it's been great. And I felt like it was finally time for an update. Since then, there's been a lot of balance changes, tests and discoveries, new information, clarifications, and a couple new weapons for us to utilize. At this point, I'm very confident and proud of what this build has become, and I cannot wait to show it off to you guys. This video is going to be split into 3 parts, so it may end up a bit longer than I initially intended, but I will have timestamps in the description for y'all. The first part will be about general new updates and information regarding Tediore as a whole. The second part will be about the changes to the primary spec for Tediore Primo Rafa. And thirdly, there'll be a brief explanation of a brand new bossing setup I've been using for most of the clips being shown in this video. And as always, there will be an in-depth write-up on the Mobalytics for these builds under the Build Variants tab, so please go ahead and check those out. There's also been multiple videos made by my friends and fellow content creators, so please give those some love as well, including Ancient Runes Throwing Hands for Amon, Grace's Quantum Toss for Harlow, Nepta's Flux Chuckerator, also for Harlow, and Retor's Feet Witch for Vex. Something I do want to bring up real quick is that currently there's a bug going around with shotguns where only one pellet of their card damage gets contributed towards the reload, which drastically affects their damage. As soon as this gets fixed, I will pin a comment letting you guys know. So something you've probably heard of a couple times on other Tediore builds is that specifically shooting and shooting replicator reloads actually benefit 3 times from gun damage. Thank you to Nepta for finding out about this specific clarification for it. Here I'm on my completely naked Rafa, just a little bit of fire rate, no specializations. The other 2 pistols I have are combo and shooting homing. So we'll look at the damage of what each one does with 1 reload. Then I'll equip this class mod I have that has 24% gun damage and just that. I use a class mod just so I can easily just swap on and off to make sure something is getting this bonus. With this equipped, here's the damage numbers afterwards, so you can start to notice that the shooting and the shooting replicator do get a lot more mileage out of that little bit of 24% gun damage. I kind of figured it's basically anything when you go to your player set that shows up under this gun damage tab right here. It did apply to assault rifles and shotguns. I only just had the wide variety of pistols available to showcase this as well. Now, this isn't to say that you can only use the ones that get ×3 gun damage. Reloads that have homing and even replicator homing and shooting on it still have a lot of value for mobbing due to their better damage application, and the lower general health that mobs have still allow them to be useful. Since my last video, the Ruby's Grasp actually got 2 buffs shown on the screen right now. The first one, very much welcome. The second one kind of leading into the why category. It was kind of already one of the better options for Tediore mobbing, and now that kind of just solidifies its place as the best alongside the Chuck. You could opt into lower mag and higher card damage if you want to focus on ammo efficiency for this, but that also just generally just apply to any Tediore gun you also wish to use for mobbing. So a gun I kind of didn't really look at too much beforehand was actually the Anarchy. Now this kind of works similarly to how the Anarchy did in Borderlands 3 before they patched the emote cancel bug, where you can actually just shoot until it's empty and then just melee over and over again to stack it up all the way up to 20. And this works fantastically for boss one-shots. It's not consistent, it's definitely a lot slower than using other ones, but it's funny, so we'll give it that. I would also like to give a formal apology to the Chuck. I was way too harsh on it in the last video, and since I've been playing around with it a lot more, it has definitely warmed up to me a whole bunch. It's a fantastic option for mobbing, it's very ammo efficient, and I've even been able to utilize it in bossing against very mobile or flying enemies with tiny hitboxes like Core Observer and Fractus. Finally, getting into the new weapons added to my previous build video, we have the Murmur. This was an item from the Halloween event that you were able to farm world bubbles, but it was and still is able to rarely world drop. Comparing its stats to other similar ARs like this purple one that I have, or even the other legendary AR, the Divided Focus, you can definitely see that the stats look very min-maxed towards Tediore chucking. Really good card damage, really good mag size, and the low fire rate kind of makes it so you want to throw it more than you actually want to hit. This is the main gun I'll be using for the majority of these boss melts in this video, but because of the high part variety and the now rare chances to get one, it's not always ideal or reasonable to be able to get one of these with good parts, sadly. Now, if you want a strong chucking option that you can actually intentionally farm for now, look no further than the newly added Inscriber pistol from the first bounty pass. This item drops from Mr. Screw and has quickly become one of my favorite chucking guns in the game right now. You can actually get one with higher mag size with the same card damage. You get one with the 32 mag, which if you try to do like the raw math on it, is actually insane. But this also has generally faster reload speed, which does make it feel like less of a slug to use compared to something like the Murmur. Getting into the changes of firmware from my last rendition of the build, was still using bullets to spare for the mag size, still using heat enough for the gun reload speed, but I've also started to use get thrown as well. Despite this saying ordnance damage here, this does apply to Tediore reloads, and I calculated it out to be its old multiplier, only added it with the 50% banger enhancement. The last slot for the standard mobbing setup uses either get thrown or airstrike, since they both give splash radius at their respective investments we have right now. I guess the elephant in the room is that get thrown was buffed from 10% to 35% despite still being a multiplier to Tediore reloads, and this is definitely the second Y change from the latest patch. The get thrown bonus only existed its own multiplier alongside the banger enhancement. For these two items alone, you get an 85% multiplier to your damage, which is insane value for only these two pieces of gear. Now, I do think this change actually makes the Recycler enhancement a lot more desirable for mobbing. The damage decrease from not taking banger is a lot less noticeable to me at least, especially because mobs have a lot less health. The extra ammo efficiency is heavily appreciated with a strong mobby gun like the Chuck or the Rubik's Grasp. For bossing, I do like to swap up, get rid of a little bit of heating up in the splash radius for 2 out of 3 Tediore. This is just a little bit more extra mag size to squeeze out more damage during these boss fights. So since my last video, I've been able to unlock and test a lot more of these specializations. With Caffeine now works with the Lance, it has never left my specialization slot since. While it's not our primary source of CDR, it can be enough to finish the gap between our overdrive ending and our action skill coming back up. I had initially thought really this would be harder to stack up, but between homing replicator guns and shooting reloads, you can very easily maintain and stack this bonus as you need, especially with the help of bonus elements like Watch for Dinner and Protein Cell. Bullet Train is taken more so for the quality of life of being able to hip fire while sprinting. That means that I won't have to worry about losing momentum while dashing around, even if while I'm not going full send on movement speed bonuses anymore, you still have the option to do so. The last slot changes depending on the content and generally how I'm feeling. Full Spectrum Arsenal will take all the gun damage bonuses that we have and help feed it into the grenades that we decide to use, as well as Apophis Lance. The best defense is useful in bossing to help squeeze out a little bit extra damage to our Tediore reloads. Or if you're someone who's still very prone to self-damage, Sturdy Self will always be a good recommendation to have. So, enough yapping about all the general updates I had for Tediore. There was a lot of stuff that's kind of happened since my original video. The skill tree hasn't really changed too much for El Tediore Primo Rafa. We still take reload speed, CDR from Preparado, and Bajo. And then we'd have this 1.0 Riba to actually get us to be able to spec a Bajo. Just the consistency of having this upon throwing a grenade is nice to have. Then we still take our bread and butter El Soldado for that enhancement gun damage while we are bossing. 3 points I had in the right tools, I moved over to Brain Dump. That's just something I've been messing around with, especially for mobbing, and it pairs really nicely with the changes in our red tree, which I'll go over in a little bit. But if you want to get a little bit more oomph out of your ordnance damage, you could still put the points right back into the right tools. In terms of the red tree, we still take Sitiar for gun damage. A more noticeable change is that instead of Shield Barriers, we actually take Juega instead to give us action skill duration back whenever we crit. This is partly the reason why we do take Brain Dump as well. It works really well with any homing replicator reload, especially the Ruby's Grasp as well. A lot of damage instances make it really easy to be able to proc this when it goes off cooldown. Then I still take Field Repairs just to make sure we have Overshield when we are starting our boss melts. El Valiente is good soup. Barrage is also good soup as well. Another change that happened in the latest patch is that 10 mod REO is now actually gun damage. It always said gun damage, but actually boosted all damage. But now that it's actually gun damage, we can actually benefit 3 times that amount towards our shooting and shooting replicator reloads. Then ultimately we also do take Soltado to double all of our overdrive bonuses when we do get a kill as well. I kind of mentioned the 3 points from Brain Dump and Right Tools are kind of flex points. Devil May Care is also another option you can put these points into as well, especially if you want to lean more into the bullet train movement speed scaling. The action skill of choice for this build is still the Apavis Lance, especially for bossing. The charging bonus from El Soldado, especially when Soldado is active, is a very big multiplier worth of damage. It's really hard to kind of pass that up. Then we take the Sangre por Sangre augment for a little bit extra CDR during casual mobbing when we do utilize this. And as I've kind of been alluding to, you can utilize the Peacebreaker cannons here for mobbing. It's really easy, very simple, very effective. The uptime is great between Juerga. I like to use Instinto, just because it's very passive, easy action skill restore. But if you want a little bit extra damage from your cannons, you can also opt into Instant Fort Battle Station to increase their damage, your grenades as well as have a little turret that can spam even more grenades. Then we also use Volatile Hollow Points because there's really no chance not to. And also if you happen to use Peacebreaker cannons with combo orbs, this makes it a lot less likely for them to blow them up in your face. As with the last rendition, this build is still able to utilize a wide variety of Tediore reloads available. If you're finding a bunch of Tediore purples on the ground and you want a quick tip of which ones to keep, here's my recommendations. For a good mobbing gun, you'll want any combination of homing with replicator and or shooting. You can rarely get all 3 of the parts on here as well. Bonus if they have high card damage and low mag size, that kind of helps with the ammo efficiency, but that's not always required. Typically this will be a pistol, an SMG with Tediore license reload, or a gun that has dataless SMG ammo swap. For bossing, you'll just want the highest mag size you could find with a shooting reload or shooting replicator. That's a bit more rare as well, while still having respectable card damage. Typically this would be a shotgun or an assault rifle. While I don't use them very often, certain underbarrels can be very beneficial to have. The support drone underbarrel is decent utility with a good duration, and more reload speed is always nice to have. The cooldown is low enough to have one active almost all the time during your bossing, even your casual mobbing sessions. Alice tracking has a cool synergy with shooting reloads. While the reloads themselves don't home in without the specific homing reload, any bullets shot from the gun do track towards the enemy for extra damage. This works really well with shotguns, especially if you happen to get a TK's wave with a 2-year reload and a decent mag size. Both of these options do allow you to utilize 3 out of 3 Tediore for your bossing setups for the large boost in enhancement gun damage, but the low duration of the buff can be kind of off-putting. I really wouldn't recommend this unless you have those specific underbarrels already on your bossing gun. Any Repkit with reload speed on is my personal preference, but other roles like Enrage or Splash can also be useful. I like the long duration of the AF1000 as an all-purpose option, but the extra movement speed from the Warp Paint also lean into more damage scaling from Bullet Train. Other options include the Kill Spring, Triple Bypass, and any purple Repkit you have with decent rolls on it. As usual, this build does allow you to utilize any grenade that you want, but the ones I like the most are able to output consistent damage for Senahia. After its second buff bug fix, the Halloween event grenade, the Scully, works really well in mobbing sections alongside other homing reloads. I like to use this with the Ruby's Grasp a lot. I've also been enjoying the Bounce Blade augment for throwing knives, since it's able to apply that debuff in a pretty wide area, but it's also not the best at stacking up Senahia. But as always, I'm going to glaze up my lingering nuke shock Tediore grenades, especially for bossing. Got good damage radius from the chains, you can control the impact damage through the remote detonation. It's usually able to kill a boss's adds all by itself for kill skills. Granat Seca is still the go-to option for this build because you still can't honestly beat one free reload coming in from all the scaling that we have. While Radix isn't any easier to fight on this setup, hopefully the skill tree and build I showcase later on will be enough to farm him consistently with ease. I prefer having 3 points in Senahia for the gun damage and at least 1 point in Confetti for helping to stack Senahia as well. And because this comm already rolls gun damage, the secondary roll can be anything that's relatively beneficial, like AR, shotgun, kinetic, or splash damage as well. The primary shield I use for this build is probably one you see way too often now, but it's the Watch for Dinner. Between the siphon part, which is helpful but not needed, and Rafa's field repair skill, we can ensure that we have the bonus shock damage available when we need it the most. I also quite like the protein cell to squeeze out a little bit more extra bonus shock damage for my bossing, but typically won't really use this unless I'm finding a boss whose attacks I easily can dodge, because this does remove your health gate. Other options for shields include the Onion if you want a little bit more survivability, or the Fireworks if you want some extra mobbing prowess. Something I want to talk about real quick is that while the enhancement slot is important for your damage, you do not need a legendary one for this build. In almost all of these gameplay clips, I'm just using either this purple banger or this blue banger with generic mag size and reload speed on it. Not because I'm being a petty snob about it, I just haven't been able to find anything better than these. With how rare good enhancements, especially legendary ones, can be, I like to provide these showcases as a baseline for what I think is doable without the quote perfect god roll. Of course, if you happen to find a good legendary with actually useful passive stats, go ahead and use it. Good for you. That being said, I still use Banger 95% of the time, with the occasional recycler if I'm running around doing bounties or completing the daily vault card mission. Enhancement gun damage, mag size, and reload speed are all useful passives you should be looking out for. Enhancement gun damage will be more ammo efficient and usable for mobbing, but the mag size passive values are much larger and will often lead to higher peak damage. This is useful for bossing, but overkill for general gameplay. As you see, I have a few on me that I kind of swap to based on how I'm feeling or what kind of content I'm. The general gameplay loop for this build still really hasn't changed much. You're just going to spam Tediore's grenades for mobbing, use your heavy hitters if a dangerous badass arrives. For bosses, you just try to activate your kill skills and then go to town with your big damage reload. Gameplay tip about the lance is that you can actually cancel your charging via mantling, grappling, or by slamming. Just a bit of fun quality of life if you want to continue using lance for mobbing. And finally, I would like to go over the bossing setup that I've put together that I've been using to kill most bosses faster than my usual Soldado setup. It's very consistent on these bosses as well. Not to say that I made this build entirely so that I could farm and bully Repkits, however, Repkits, your ass is mine now. This build isn't always going to be stronger than the Soldado variant, but it still manages to have its own strengths. It's able to stack up damage quicker, which means it's able to output that damage quicker. It works best on large and mobile grounded bosses, like an unnamed Primordial Vault Guardian. It even somehow manages to work well in Fight for Your Life if you down yourself during a boss mode from the residual damage bonuses we have stacked up. Hopefully. Now, this build isn't perfect and does have its limitations. It does not work great against flying enemies that have tiny hitboxes like the aforementioned Practice and Core Observer, since it becomes difficult to stack up our damage. An annoying bug I have to deal with is that sometimes Diamond Hands just selects to start decaying on its own for no reason. In a mob, it's just fine. You probably swap to a different grenade than the one I use for bossing, but I basically never use this setup outside of specific bosses. It's less of a which build do I want to use and more so what boss do I want to farm. So because this build shares a lot of similarities with my primary setup, I won't go over every minute detail, just the main differences. Our blue tree is very much the same with our reload speed and CDR. We don't have these points in brain dump anymore because we've spec'd a lot of it into green tree. Handshake deal and expedite help get us down the tree. I've heard that dial-in works with the Slippy grenade, but I'm just too lazy to test it. You can easily just put this back into expedite if you want. Diamond Hands is really the bread and butter of this setup. We can use this to spam Slippies to stack gun damage and quickly utilize that gun damage towards our Tediore reloads before it runs out. The kind of a cool thing you can do is that if any Slippies are persisting while the damage from the Slippies will continue to give you stacks of Diamond Hands, so you can actually stay in that upper 15 to 20 stacks of Diamond Hands, which is nice. And it doesn't really happen much unless the boss is just AFK sitting there like Repkits. Artilleria is to help get us down the tree, but you can also put these points into Collaborate Ignition if you want to get more damage out of Slippy. Gone ahead and put 3 more points into center here for the gun damage it already is providing. 1 point in Booming Business, because why not? I had a point left over. And I do have El Paraguas to give us more splash damage, but also the splash crit chance. I believe this only works if you don't directly hit the enemy. So it's not consistent, but it's funny. As expected, this setup uses Lance for the El Soldado charging bonuses. Sadly, Peacebreaker cannons would, because they deal gun damage, start decaying diamond hands right away. It makes that a lot harder to stack it up. I was trying out a hybrid arc knife setup with Tediores, using bonus elements alongside diamond hands to stack it up twice as quickly, but it just didn't feel, arc knives didn't feel that good. It was too slippery, yet it somehow felt clunky. So for this, we'll just stick it with Lance. Here in this setup, you want to bring out all of your heavy hitters, all of your high mag size ARs, shotguns, bring out your Inscribers, your Murmurs, whip out as much mag size as you can for both your enhancements and your firmware, alongside a banger with all this mag size bonuses. We don't really care about ammo efficiency, we just want the boss dead. So the Slippy is kind of the sole grenade of choice for this build, just because it allows us to quickly stack diamond hands outside of arc knives for all of our bossing modes. This is the one I've been using for a majority of these setups. This is a level 12 one I got during a Vex playthrough I did as well. A couple benefits a low level Slippy has over one that is at max level. It does minimal self damage, and technically you're able to stack diamond hands on yourself using it, but that's not something I rarely utilize at all. Secondly, Slippy kind of just does a lot of damage, especially if you feed into specializations like full spectrum arsenal, even bare arms. You can easily just take care of an entire boss's HP bar on its own. So ultimately, I decided to use a low level one just so I could be a petty bitch about showing off my Tediores more directly. But a level 51 will work perfectly fine if you don't want to stoop down to my level of pettiness. A level 50 Slippy will also work very well in mobbing if the target you want to farm for example, is a big Encore Ripper drill site boss. Certain bonus elements on the Slippy do allow it to stack diamond hands multiple times per damage instance, along with the extra free grenade from Granazerker and any free grenade spawns from Booming Business. It becomes very easy to actually get diamond hands stacked up quickly. Granazerker is our go-to comp, and again, I heavily recommend having at least 1 point in confetti, just so you're able to stack diamond hands faster. As well as the primary shield I like to use in bossing is going to be the Tediore Itself, because the bonus shock element it provides is larger than the What's for Dinner. Most bosses either have easy to dodge attacks, or have an opening animation that allows us to do our full rain dance setup, which means the downside of losing health gate isn't that much of a downside when we can just kill them before they do anything. You can also just utilize the Siphon What's for Dinner, although we have no field repairs this time, so you'll have to gamble on those Siphon procs. So it'll kind of explain in real time what the rain dance for this build kind of is. You jump into the boss arena, you're going to slam to activate Tediore Itself. You can Repkit during this animation. You can throw a couple Slippies to start cracking diamond hands, and then rotate around the boss while throwing Tediores, and boom. You're going to slam just so Tediore Itself doesn't continue to run out, but there's no reason to do so. I just like it for the flair. Typically that's going to be the same sort of rain dance setup against all the bosses that this build is using. And so, that's all the updates I have for this Tediore Primo Rafa build video. I knew this video was going to be a long one, so if you're still here, I appreciate it. I always try to put a lot of effort into these videos, and your likes and comments mean a lot to me. This video ended up being so long I actually started running out of B-roll footage I had. Given what we know about Bloom Reaper being a large enemy with vital crystals, I think /cope that Tediore builds would be one of the best builds to utilize him due to the consistent splash damage it can output. I will definitely be taking either of these builds into Bloom Reaper when he releases next month. If you'd like, I also recommend joining the Community Soup Kitchen Discord in the description. It's full of other content creators, theory crafters, and tons of useful to niche information about Borderlands 4. I have my own thread for Tediore testing where I post my own useful information, as well as anything that kind of makes me wonder, why would Gearbox do this? If you'd like to see more Tediore content in the future, please go ahead and subscribe. I try my best to showcase most new Tediores added and post-launch content, as long as they're good for chucking builds. Thank you guys for sticking around until the end, and have happy holidays.